When a man truly loves a woman, he doesn't just desire her, he truly sees her. Something awakens within his soul, as if he sees in her not merely a partner, but a bridge to his own completeness. According to Carl Jung, authentic love goes far beyond conventional romance. It is an alchemical process in which the masculine and the feminine meet not only in the other, but within oneself. This video will reveal what happens inside a man when love is real, deep and transformative, not born out of need, but from the soul's drive toward individuation. Get ready to embark on an intense journey where love becomes a mirror, a challenge, and an expansion. If you believe that true love begins within us, comment below. True love transforms me. In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, true love isn't a fairy tale, but an opportunity for individuation, the process of becoming whole. When a man deeply loves a woman, he is not merely responding to an instinctive impulse. He is being called by his own psyche to confront and integrate profound aspects of himself. Jung describes the concept of the anima as the representation of the feminine principle in a man's unconscious. To truly love a woman means not to project one's own anima onto her, that is, not to see her as an idealized figure or a mere reflection of one's fantasies, but to recognize her as a real, distinct individual. This differentiation marks the beginning of emotional and psychological maturity. Many men fall in love with their projections, with the unconscious image they carry of the feminine, and in doing so, become prisoners of unrealistic expectations. But when love is genuine, it becomes a mirror. The woman begins to reflect back what the man needs to integrate within himself. This is when he confronts his shadow, the rejected parts of his personality that emerge in intimate relationships. True love demands the courage to see the other as they truly are, and to see oneself with the same honesty. It makes room for growth, for dissolving an inflated ego, for a dialogue between reason and emotion, between action and receptivity. According to Jung, to truly love a woman is to consciously participate in a process of mutual transformation, where both partners journey not toward merging, but toward wholeness. For Jung, one of the greatest obstacles to true love is projection. Projective passion occurs when a man falls in love, not with the real woman before him, but with the unconscious image he harbors, his anima. This inner figure, composed of emotional experiences, maternal impressions, idealizations, and repressed desires, is cast upon the partner like a veil. The man believes he is in love with the woman, when in fact he is in love with his own reflection in her. This dynamic is intensely seductive and may seem magical at first. Everything about her appears perfect and deeply meaningful, as if destiny itself conspired for this encounter. But over time, as everyday life reveals reality, the projection begins to dissolve. The woman no longer matches the created ideal, and the enchantment gives way to frustration, resentment, and even abandonment. Projective passion, therefore, is a form of psychic blindness. Conscious love, on the other hand, is born when a man begins to recognize this projection and chooses to move beyond it. He understands that the woman is not responsible for his completeness or fulfilling his internal voids. Instead of expecting her to heal his wounds or confirm his masculinity, he positions himself to listen, to be present, and to respect her otherness. Conscious love recognizes that the other is a universe in her own right, full of both shadows and light, and that the relationship is not about fusion, but about encounter. For this to happen, a man must begin an inner process of differentiation, distinguishing between what is his and what belongs to the other. When he loves consciously, he doesn't demand that the woman always be affectionate, beautiful, understanding, or perfect. He is willing to see in her contradictions, conflicts, and pains, and still remain by her side. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse or nullification, but rather cultivating an open, loving presence in the face of reality, not the ideal. Jung believed that true relationships require a profound level of self-knowledge. The love that endures time and reality is one that grows out of mutual acceptance of human imperfections. Passion is blind because it fails to see the other. True love sees clearly and, despite that, chooses to remain. This choice is not easy. It demands inner work, a willingness to engage in dialogue, and above all, the courage to reconsider old patterns. When a man truly loves a woman, he begins to notice how his feelings for her connect him with undeveloped aspects of his own soul: tenderness, vulnerability, the desire to protect, the fear of abandonment. Each emotion awakened is a symbolic key, an opportunity for evolution. The relationship becomes a mirror reflecting not just his light, but also his shadows. Herein lies the fundamental difference. In projective passion, the other is used to fill a void. In conscious love, the other is welcomed as a fellow traveler. Instead of saying, "You complete me," the man feels that "you reveal me," and that revelation can often be uncomfortable, yet it is profoundly liberating. Loving consciously is a revolutionary act. It means setting aside narcissism, control, and idealization. It means being willing to learn from the other, to grow together, and to allow the relationship to reveal not only who the other is, but who you can become alongside them. There are no shortcuts on this path, but for those who choose to walk it, love ceases to be a prison of expectations and transforms into a bridge to wholeness. When a man truly loves a woman, he abandons the fantasy of perfection and dives into the reality of the encounter. He no longer seeks a goddess to be adored, but a whole woman to be understood, respected and loved in her humanity. And it is precisely at this point that love becomes sacred. To understand what a man does when he truly loves a woman, it is essential to grasp the role of the anima in his psyche. According to Jung, the anima is the archetype of the inner feminine within a man's unconscious. She embodies all the feminine qualities he has yet to consciously integrate: sensitivity, intuition, receptivity, empathy, imagination. This archetype is not merely a passive figure within him. It is active, alive, and directly influences his perception of the world, especially regarding women. From childhood, a man forms his internal image of the feminine based on his experiences with significant female figures, particularly his mother. If that relationship was marked by warmth, presence, and affection, the anima tends to develop positively. However, if it was characterized by abandonment, coldness, manipulation, or idealization, the anima may become distorted, projecting unconscious and often destructive patterns onto romantic relationships. When a man enters a relationship with a woman, he rarely sees who she truly is at first. Instead, he sees a projection of his anima. He feels as though he is encountering something familiar, almost mythical, as if that woman wields an inexplicable power over him. That's why the early stages of love often feel magical, a symbolic fusion between the man's unconscious and the external figure of the woman. Yet that magic can be illusory. If the man is not aware of the anima's influence, he begins to demand that the woman live up to the idealized internal image he has created. He expects her to be perpetually sweet, understanding, sensual, maternal, a muse. When the real woman fails to meet this fantasy, as inevitably happens, he experiences frustration, anger, and disillusionment. He then perceives his partner as different from before, without realizing that it is his own perception that has changed, not necessarily her. On the other hand, when a man begins to work on himself and integrate his anima, he stops compulsively projecting it onto the women around him. He starts to acknowledge his own emotions, accepts his sensitivity, cultivates silence, and listens to his intuition. As a result, his relationship with the feminine, both within and outside of himself, transforms. He no longer seeks in a woman a refuge or a savior. Instead, he finds her as an equal, someone who shares in the same journey of self-knowledge. The integration of the anima transforms love. The man becomes more complete, less emotionally dependent, and better able to offer genuine presence and attentive listening. He no longer tries to control or mold the woman according to his unconscious expectations, but instead seeks to know her in her authenticity. He values not only her beauty or sexuality, but also her worldview, her history, and her contradictions. Love ceases to be an escape from emptiness and becomes a bridge for mutual growth. Jung saw the anima as the mediator between a man's ego and his deeper unconscious. When a man falls in love, this mediation intensifies because the woman who awakens his anima is, in fact, calling him to a process of inner transformation. If he listens to that call, the relationship can become a portal to individuation. But if he resists, trying to maintain the fantasy of perfection or avoiding confrontation with his own shadows, the relationship is doomed to collapse. Thus, truly loving a woman also means loving one's own anima, learning from it, dialoguing with it, and integrating its messages. It means understanding that the woman who stirs deep emotions is not there to complete the man, but to help him look inward. And the more he becomes whole on his own, the more capable he is of loving the other in her entirety. In this context, love ceases to be a necessity and becomes a choice a mature, conscious choice, nourished by the acceptance of one's own vulnerability and the sincere desire to grow alongside the other. Perhaps this is the deepest gesture of love a man can offer. When a man truly loves a woman, he lets go of the fantasy of perfection and embraces the reality of the encounter. He is no longer in search of a goddess to worship, but of a whole real woman to understand, respect, and love for who she is. It is precisely at this point that love becomes sacred. In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, the shadow represents all aspects of personality that have been rejected, repressed, or denied throughout life. The impulses, desires, emotions, and traits that the ego refuses to acknowledge as compatible with its idealized self-image. When a man truly loves a woman, this deep and intimate relationship often becomes the perfect setting for his shadow to emerge. Paradoxically, it is in true love that the most hidden parts of his soul are revealed. At the beginning of a relationship, everything may seem harmonious, but as the bond deepens, darker aspects start to surface. Insecurities, jealousy, possessiveness, fear of vulnerability, repressed anger, and old frustrations, all that had been kept under control, begin to manifest with force. This isn't a sign that love is failing. On the contrary, it shows that its transformative power is at work. The shadow is activated because the romantic relationship touches directly on the deepest parts of a man's identity. Loving someone authentically puts him face to face with all that he has not yet mastered within himself. The woman becomes a mirror reflecting both his luminous potential and his oldest wounds. Sometimes a gesture, a word, or even a silence is enough to awaken old traumas. What's at stake here is not just his relationship with his partner, but his relationship with himself. This process, as uncomfortable as it may be, is a rare opportunity. Instead of fleeing from the pain or projecting the blame onto the woman, the man who truly loves uses these crises as invitations for reflection and healing. He begins to ask himself, why do I react this way? Where does this fear come from? Which part of me feels threatened? In this context, true love becomes an initiatory path, inviting transformation not through theory, but through profound emotional experience. Jung once said that one does not illuminate by imagining figures of light, but by making darkness conscious. The romantic relationship is one of the richest spaces for such awareness. By confronting his shadow, the man discovers that what he most fears or rejects may hold the key to his inner freedom. For example, his repressed aggressiveness can transform into assertiveness. His emotional neediness can reveal a deep desire for authentic connection, and his fear of abandonment may point to a need to reconnect with his true self. For this alchemy to occur, he must choose to remain present. Fleeing the relationship when the shadow appears, whether through emotional distancing, infidelity, silence, or idealizing someone else, is a refusal of the lesson. Truly loving requires the courage to traverse one's own abysses rather than projecting them onto the other. When a man takes responsibility for his emotions, he stops expecting the woman to heal his wounds. Instead, he begins to tend to them himself with humility and awareness. In doing so, he also becomes more empathetic and understanding, recognizing that his partner too carries her own shadow. Their love then becomes a dance where two whole beings, imperfect as they are, meet and support each other on the path of self-discovery. Transforming the shadow doesn't mean eliminating it, but integrating it, acknowledging its difficult parts without being completely defined by them, accepting them as legitimate parts of oneself. A man who accepts his shadow becomes freer, more authentic, and better able to love without manipulation, judgment, or unrealistic demands. This is the power of true love. It reveals what was hidden, brings light to darkness, and invites deep transformation. There are no shortcuts on this path, and not everyone is ready to follow it. But when a man truly loves, he accepts the call. He understands that beyond finding the other, this love helps him find himself. Ultimately, that is what distinguishes true love from fleeting passion. It not only warms the heart, but also awakens the soul. Individuation, a central concept in Carl Jung's analytical psychology, is the process of becoming who we truly are, a continuous movement of integrating the diverse parts of the psyche toward wholeness. It's not about achieving perfection, but about living in harmony with one's inner truth, embracing both light and shadow, both the masculine and the feminine. Contrary to popular belief, this process doesn't occur solely in the silence of introspection or the isolation of spiritual search. Often, It is in the heart of a loving relationship that individuation finds its most fertile ground. When a man truly loves a woman, he stands before a powerful opportunity for psychological and spiritual growth. The relationship becomes a symbolic field where defenses, idealizations, and wounds are exposed. True love does not spare the man from confronting his own truth. It leads him straight to the center of his being, revealing both his strengths and his vulnerabilities. And it is in this space, where the soul is touched in a visceral way, that the process of individuation can blossom. In this context, the woman is not just a companion, but a living mirror of the man's psyche. Her presence awakens in him dormant aspects, unexperienced emotions, forgotten desires, unchallenged fears. Every conflict, every moment of intimacy, every shared challenge is both a relational experience and an archetypal call to self-knowledge. Jung noted that every intimate relationship is inevitably a field of projection, but when approached with awareness, it can become a bridge to the self, the organizing center of the psyche. On the path to individuation, the man stops seeing the woman as an ideal to be possessed and begins to recognize her as an ally in his journey of integration. He comes to understand that the true purpose of the relationship isn't to obtain pleasure or emotional stability, but to awaken and evolve. This doesn't mean romanticizing suffering or idealizing challenges, but understanding that every difficulty is a symbolic opportunity for growth. In this process, he is also called to integrate his anima, the inner feminine, and to confront his shadow, as described earlier. Even more deeply, he is invited to disidentify from societal roles, external expectations, and the masks of the ego. Truly loving a woman calls him to be vulnerable, authentic, and real. This means shedding the armor of masculine performance in order to embrace the fullness of being a human in constant formation. The relationship then becomes a soul laboratory, not because the partners are constantly analyzing one another, but because both are willing to grow together. They allow themselves to make mistakes, to fall, and to start over. The relationship is not perfect, but it is alive, and in that imperfection lies the potential for transformation. Individuation occurs when the man realizes that love is not an end in itself, but a means, a way to access deeper dimensions of oneself and consequently to offer the world a more complete and genuine presence. Unlike a symbiotic fusion where individuals lose themselves in each other, individuation in a romantic relationship promotes differentiation. The man realizes that he does not need the woman to save him, just as she does not need him to save her. Both learn to walk side by side, respecting each other's boundaries, differences, and rhythms. Love becomes a space of freedom and commitment, of shared solitude, and of the meeting of two evolving wholenesses. Jung warned that true love requires the willingness to endure the tension between opposites, between the desire for union and the need for separation, between surrender and autonomy. Only then can one break free from unconscious repetition and live a relationship based on awareness. And that is what makes this type of love both rare and profoundly transformative. The man who truly loves a woman is not merely loving someone. He is accepting an existential invitation, a call to become more than he was before the encounter. In answering that call, he moves toward his self, his wholeness, his true essence. In this sense, love ceases to be merely an emotion and becomes a spiritual practice, a journey of individuation shared by two. To truly love a woman, in light of Carl Jung's psychology, is far more than living a romance. It is answering a deep inner call, where every act of love is also a step toward individuation. When a man lets go of projection and embraces conscious love, when he recognizes his anima and welcomes his shadow, he not only transforms his relationship, he transforms himself. The romantic relationship ceases to be a field of lack and becomes a space for expansion, healing, and awakening. This is the power of real love. It does not promise constant comfort, but it offers truth, revelation, and growth. It is a path of courage, designed for those who wish to go beyond the surface and touch the depths of the soul. Remember, true love doesn't take us away from ourselves, it brings us back home. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications to continue this journey of self-discovery with us. And don't leave without checking out the video on the screen. It complements this content and might be your next step in personal transformation.